You good?
Yeah.
Mele? 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone, to our new episode of the Real European Football Talk. Now, with me today is Coach Mele, and yeah, we're talking today a little bit about a small country around Germany, Switzerland. You know, everyone knows in Switzerland they'll play also football. The most people just know the Calendar Broncos because of the European titles, but there is more going on in Switzerland, and they get a new board at the federation, and we are happy to have today the vice president of the Switzerland Federation. Gleb is in here in the show. Welcome, Gleb, and how you doing in this crazy time?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be on. Things are good. Like I said in the pre-podcast pep talk, I'm in good health. My family's in good health, and thankfully in Switzerland, and it appears in Western Europe as a whole, things are slowing down a little bit with the pandemic. So, you know, slight optimism, I would say, all around, and, you know, fingers crossed that this can trickle down to sport and have a favorable outcome to sport, perhaps in the coming weeks and months.
Perfect. And how you come to Switzerland football? How you get with Switzerland football in touch? You start as a player or just as a vice president? How you get in touch with Swiss football?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been involved in some shape or form in Swiss football for over 12 years now. Actually, maybe even more than that. Basically, many years ago in the mid 2000s, I started working as a weekend job at McDonald's, and a few of the guys at the local McDonald's actually had an American football team that they had just started, the La Côte Centurions in Glon. That's next to Nyon near Geneva in Switzerland. And they were like, "Hey, come by, you know, it's just fun, guys throwing balls around and running some plays." And that was maybe 2006, 2007, something like that. Yeah, I've been involved in football ever since. So I started out as a player, then I became a referee, and I took over as a vice president and then a president of the local club after a few years. And then we entered the Swiss American Football Association, the SAFV, as a club back in 2014. And that's where I started rubbing shoulders with, you know, the Broncos and some of these other major players at league meetings as a team president. Started refereeing at with the association at the national level as well. So previously we were in a small local regional league. Yeah, so basically I stayed with the Centurions for a long time. The Centurions, unfortunately, a problem that will be familiar to a lot of teams, I think, in Europe. We're having recruitment issues, and we lost a coach that we had, and things just kind of started falling apart. So today, fortunately, the Centurions still live, but as a flag veterans team. I moved on from the Centurions to become the vice president of the Geneva Seahawks, the vice champion of Switzerland for the past 2 seasons. And I had a great time working for the Seahawks with Larry Legault, who's one of the best coaches, in my opinion, in Europe at the moment. Former head coach of the French national team and of the Black Panthers as well in Dunol. And so that was a fun experience for me. But on a personal level, I moved to Zurich actually 2.5 years ago, and it became increasingly difficult to be an active member of the Seahawks on the other side of the country. A lot of the discussions and the negotiations and the processes were happening on an informal basis in person. And so I found that I was not able to contribute to the level that I wanted to. And so I stepped away from that organization. And then really less than a year later, I was talking to Claudio of the Lucerne Lions, and a few other guys, and we were thinking, hey, wait a second. It looks like the SAFV board has a few holes in it. We're not sure if the current president, Glenn, is going to stay on because, you know, he's spoken about not having enough time and having other things on the personal side and professional side. And so we made a bid with Claudio. We decided, you know, we'll just go for it, get some guys together and see if we can make a positive difference. And here we are. Over 6 months later, in the middle of the biggest crisis European sports and Europe has faced perhaps since World War II. So, you know, fun times, but happy to be here, and it's been a hell of a ride so far.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, I know Claudio, and I think the change in the federation, this is the biggest need with the Switzerland was needed. And I love to see you young guys there and doing there something. What was your goal? Let's say there's no corona. What was your vision, or what is your vision for Switzerland football? But we all know nobody knows what happened after the crisis. But
no,
what
sure.
was your idea about Switzerland football?
Sure. So when Claudio and I went into this last year, we had a few common goals, I would say, and then I have a few personal ones as well. So I think in terms of common goals, we wanted to bring more structure and transparency to the league. A lot of the decisions that were being made, be it under Glenn's tenure or previously, there wasn't, in our opinion, enough communication with the teams in terms of how these decisions were made, not enough involvement with the teams. So we were thinking, okay, how do we make this a bit more transparent, a bit more communicative? It's difficult. Obviously, we can't change that overnight. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of volunteering, a lot of effort. But one of the things that we've tried to do in order to attain that goal is to work with Swiss Olympic and the local sports authorities in Switzerland in order to work on improving our league structure and getting their guidance and counsel on how to tackle these things, how to approach volunteer recruitment, structure, transparency with our finances and with our decision making, things like that. So that's a topic where I think everybody in the board is aligned. One of my kind of, I would say, personal things that is shared also by, I think, a lot of people in the league and the board is safety. So I've been aware of, you know, CTE and concussion related issues for many years now. And I've taken a personal interest in it, having seen friends suffering from concussions in games and on the sideline, stuff like that. And so I have been working with Christian Varzecka, who is our medical director in Switzerland for the league, on a concussion protocol. So that's still in the works. It takes a while to get that together and to actually roll it out and implement it. But basically anything that we can do to improve player safety, including perhaps a concussion protocol, something we're working on, something we're trying to get through. And then I think finally the other point is developing the league and the game with youth. So maybe those things sound like they're counterintuitive, you know, safety and youth players. There's a debate around that. How do we make that work? But I think it's also important here to understand that I'm not only talking about tackle football, we're also talking about flag. And I think overall, if we are able to bring safety to tackle football and to develop flag football, we can have really something for everybody. And I think that if we can, sorry, I'm going really long with this, answer. But I think if we're able to build the game with the youth, this will ensure the future success and longevity of the league. I think in terms of numbers, you know, I'm not sure exactly. I don't have the numbers in my head right now for what we have in Switzerland. I think we're around maybe 3,000, give or take, at the moment in terms of total players. But most of the growth we've seen in the past 10 years has been actually with juniors. Yeah. We've developed under 16, under 19. We've developed flag for kids, even, you know, as low as 10 or 9 or even younger. With some clubs like in Geneva, for example, who have very well developed junior programs. And so that would be my area of focus personally. You know, this is not the league's direction, but I'm saying I think personally that if we can focus on developing youth football, junior tackle, and flag, that is, you know, the key to the future, I would say, if we can do it in a safe and positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what was my thing when I was in Lucerne. I was like, yeah, we need to go on the schools. We need to go get in touch with all these kids around. And I mean, it's tough because soccer is everywhere. And in Switzerland, you have a big ice hockey community, the winter sports, everything. But yeah, of course, getting more and more kids involved in that. That's a really, really big thing. And just get a quick big topic. What change you make about Corona? We see you postpone the season or you cancel the season.
Right.
How was your decision made? Because we read in the international paper it was a 5-1 decision or something, vote or something like that. I don't know. Was it the right or how?
Right.
How it comes to
I think that all of our, if we're talking about the NLA, and we're talking about the 6 teams in the NLA, I was on that call. So we were supposed to have our general assembly. I think this was mid-March, and we did a Zoom instead. So we stayed safe because already things were getting a bit hairy. And so I think that there was differing opinions on what to communicate externally, that's for sure. There were differing opinions on the timelines for, you know, when to communicate, how to communicate, what can we say, what do we want to tell players and fans. But overall, I think everybody had player safety in mind, and everybody was focused on how can we do the right thing and follow government guidance and not put our players in danger, while also giving some ray of hope to fans and players and coaches and sponsors and whatnot. And so this is where we arrived at the decision to cancel the NLA championship, because it was highly improbable that we would have enough time to run a full championship by mid-July. And so all of our presidents in that conversation felt that whatever we do, we need to do it by the Swiss Bowl date mid-July, that we could not extend it further into the summer. And that's really what drove us to make that decision. We figured that with the time that we already know we're not going to be able to practice and play, which at that point was already pretty much May 1st, right? De facto, or at least late April. We just didn't anticipate that we would have enough time to do a proper championship. Yeah. So the decision was not to say no more football in 2020. And that's not the decision today either. It's more a question of saying, in all fairness, we cannot call this a championship, and we cannot crown a champion and have this season be comparable to future and past seasons with more games. It's just not fair to everybody involved. And that's kind of the logic behind that decision. But that really applies to just the NLA. So the NLB and the NLC, up until basically yesterday, we had not formally canceled the championships. Yesterday, we sent out an email communication to all the teams saying that we have now effectively canceled those championships as well. And with that, we will be publishing something along those lines, I believe later today or tomorrow on our website, but the teams are all informed. Obviously, I'm not going on here and saying this without the team's knowledge, because that would not be very professional. But basically, we have come to terms as an association, and I think the teams as well, seeing how things are developing in the world with coronavirus, that we will not be able to have any form of a championship this year. It's just not fair to set that expectation. However, we still want to put guys on a field and have some form of games. Are these going to be charity games? Is this going to be a cup? Are these going to be just, you know, a few friendlies? We don't know yet. But there is a desire from players, sponsors, teams, coaches, and from us as an association, because I mean, basically that's our mission, right? It's to put football on the pitch, on the field. we want to have football in 2020. We just don't know when that's going to happen and how that's going to happen. And that's an ongoing conversation with all the relevant stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah, this is how it looks here in Germany as well. I mean, we have more teams. We have 16 teams in the GFL and 8 North, 8 South. And on one point, it's also for us. I mean, the German ball is 10th of October. On one point here is also when you want to play these games, you know, from September to October, it's 6 weekends or maybe 5 weekends. Yeah. But we are also looking for the opportunity to get some friendly games after everything is done. And I always say when we play at the Christmas ball at Christmas evening, I don't know, but yeah, we are here in the corner. We are here in Winterthur is just around us, and Calanda, Austria, the Hohenems Blue Devils, of course the Kempten Comets. So if the borders are open, I think that can become some interesting friendly games for fans. And
I think everything that's on the table. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, everyone want to go outside, and everyone want to see some again.
No, totally. I mean, that's totally obviously on everybody's mind is, you know, when can I go back to some form of normalcy, right?
Yeah.
And I think the challenge that we face as an association is that, and as a sport, at least in Switzerland, but I think also in other parts of Europe and the world, is that a lot of the current measures that have been implemented to fight the spread of the virus, namely the social distancing measures, prevent us from really having a clear path to playing anytime soon, right? So we already see that maybe as of June in Switzerland, some sport can resume. But by some sport, what do we mean? We mean sports that do not break the social distancing rules of 2 meters between each person and the rules of no more than 5 people in a public gathering. So of course, with those parameters, American football is impossible, whether it's flag or tackle, right? So we anticipate that in the coming weeks and months, players will be able to train individually. Maybe they can go on runs together or work out together as pairs or small groups. But in terms of putting people on the field and having them play, whether it's friendly or competitive football, as an association, we don't want to create that situation before people have enough time to train and to prepare. Because again, this goes back to my point about safety, right? We're not being responsible if we are saying, okay, you know, Berset and the Federal Council in Bern are saying, let's go, green light tomorrow, right? We still need to give a few weeks of training to each of the teams to make sure that the guys are ready and to make sure that there's a lesser risk of injury and so forth and so on, right? So if right now June is what we're looking at for some return to sport, right? Then that means that at the earliest, that's July, right? July, we're practicing maybe in some shape or form as a sport. So that means that August is the earliest we can look to for any kind of organized football. And this is best case scenario, right? If people start going back out and there's no vaccine, there's no treatment, there's not enough testing, things can spike again. We can be back indoors having more podcasts in 2 months, right?
Yeah,
so it's really hard for us to plan. We're trying to prepare every single scenario possible, and we're still crossing our fingers that we can have football in the summer and the fall. And we're definitely working with the teams on figuring out how that can work and what the format can be. And we really hope we can deliver football, but we're also monitoring guidance from Bern, guidance from the Federal Office of Sport, the BASPO, the OFSBO, and also looking at that as well, because obviously that's important, right? And beyond that guidance, we also need access to fields. We also need access to infrastructure. Everybody's going to be fighting over that as soon as there's a green light. So there's a myriad of factors here to consider. And you know, unfortunately, American football is definitely not at the top of the totem pole when it comes to these considerations, right? So,
That's thing. I mean, you already mentioned it, but there is one huge topic what everyone also in Germany and around Europe is thinking. What is if we start playing again? I mean, there will be nothing against Corona. So
Right.
what if you're playing and you figured out an opponent player has Corona?
Right.
Is then the whole team not allowed to play, or how that? I mean,
Yeah.
this is the biggest question before we can start again, and
Absolutely.
nobody really can give an answer to it. Because
No. And if we look at famous or popular sports as a precedent, you might recall that there was a player, I believe, on the Utah Jazz or one of these NBA teams in the U.S. who famously got Corona, and then, you know, did this whole ass hattery thing where he touched all the microphones and said he doesn't have it. And then they shut down the league. They shut down the league within 48 hours after he tested positive. So, of course, if we start seeing cases of players testing positive, once we start some form of training, that's going to have a pretty big impact on how we do things. It's just impossible to plan for that right now. There are scenarios that I can see this working. Hypothetically, if tomorrow, which is not the case, but if tomorrow Europe has sufficient testing kits that are working properly for everybody, right? Every single person, then okay, maybe that's a starting point, right? Or if tomorrow we know with 100% certainty that the chances of infection for under 19s are minimal, and that the chances of complications for under 19s are minimal. That's a starting point. But even in those scenarios, right, you still need referees, some of whom, Raymond, for example, our head of refereeing, is past retirement age, right? You still need people driving buses. Do we put 50 people in a bus? Like, how does that work, right? So there's a lot of other moving parts here that even if we're able to figure some things out, there's a lot of other stuff that we need to consider. So definitely it's complicated. I don't want to, you know, say that we're expecting rainbows and unicorns here, right? But we're just preparing for different scenarios with the information that we have right now and hoping for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's enough for Corona because everyone.
It can keep going.
Sure. Yeah. Fair enough.
These are the same conversations we have every day. So
yeah. Everybody's talking about this. Yeah, it's just absolutely. It is what it is.
Let's take a look on the NLA, the highest league in Switzerland. You have this outstanding team, the Calanda Broncos. You think it's a possibility to expire the league to more teams, or like I think 6? I mean, you have the first 4 already make the playoffs. Actually, when you win more than 3 games, you're in the playoffs at one point.
Sure.
Is this something in your mind? You think, hey, to get it a little bit more interest, getting a bigger league there in Switzerland, or is there a wish from teams to doing this, or how that will go?
So yes, there is a wish from teams. Yes, there's an interest. We have looked at different formats as an association in the past. There have been different individual proposals from individual teams brought to league meetings in the past. We've looked at an 8-team NLA. We've looked at other scenarios. We've looked at an NLA where you have to hit a gazillion parameters to get in to ensure that you stay in, so that you avoid teams, you know, coming in and out and getting steamrolled because they got in without really having the resources necessary to stay in. So there's a lot of discussions there for sure. And personally, I think that a bigger league could be fun, could be interesting, could be more exciting. But I think the main thing to think about here with all of these considerations is the teams themselves, right? So as an association, we're trying to put the best product together possible for the teams. So if the teams want to go in that direction, we'll make it happen, right? If they don't, well, we'll wait and see. And so right now we're in that second bucket. We're waiting and seeing. We need 8 strong, resource-rich teams. And by resources, I don't only mean money, I also mean people. You need a heck of a lot of volunteers and personnel, sponsors around the team to make sure that your junior programs are running, to make sure that you have game day infrastructure, you know, even the guys holding the down markers, right? These are all people that you need. And so I just don't think that we have those 8 teams right now that have that infrastructure. You have some teams in the B League Thun Tigers, Lucerne Lions, your former team, they're close. They're close. They're almost there, right? And sometimes, you know, they go up, they're there. Maybe they go down the next year. But there's few teams that can go up and stay up and be a Bern, a Winterthur, a Geneva, a Calanda, a Basel. You know, those are kind of the guys that have managed to stick around for more than 5 years, in some cases more than 10 years. It's hard to get that kind of second layer from the B, really putting a good product together and taking it to the next level. We saw, you know, Lausanne go up. We saw Lucerne go in. Lausanne's out, you know, Lucerne question mark, right? How's that going to play out in the future? So it's hard. I think it's hard to have in Switzerland, with the resources and the personnel and the volunteers that we have, it's hard to have 8 strong teams that can hold their presence in an NLA. So this is why we still have 6, right? And even 6, that 6 team, it's not stable. It's always going up and down, right? So to go back to your question, it would be more fun. It would be more competitive, but you need the teams to put it together. And if we can help with that, if we can help with some kind of structuring, guidance, counsel, we'll do that. You know, Claudio obviously comes from a team background. I come from a team background. John Jordan, our technical director, is the acting juniors coach for Bern. So we have a variety of experiences there that we can use to guide teams if they ask for our guidance and counsel. But the teams still need to do the heavy lifting of finding the personnel and the volunteers and the coaches to keep that well-oiled machine running. And that's really the challenging part.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think teams scared away when you have these 2 strong teams, Calanda Broncos with the international titles, and of course also the Seahawks. You think it scares also some teams away, say, oh, this is like 4 losses anyway, so why? Or no, absolutely not. So I mean, Geneva pre-Larry, they weren't anywhere near a title, right? Yeah. So if anything, when you have a strong team like Calanda dominating, that makes it even more interesting to dethrone the champion. You know, if you take the professional leagues in the U.S. as an example, you look at the big boys who win the championships, namely the Patriots. Everybody's coming for them. You know, nobody's like, oh, they're too strong, I'm just going to stay home and watch Netflix, right? Yeah. People really want to deliver. They want to come out guns blazing and take down those teams. And I've definitely seen games as a referee where I'm in the middle of it, looking at these titans clashing, and I've definitely seen games where the Broncos won, but when you look at the game tape, you know, it was really close. And I've definitely seen games where Geneva, you know, they scraped through or they barely missed. For example, you know, with the Broncos there. So no, I don't think it discourages anybody. Now, you might have teams who are hesitant to say, I want to go up to A because they're not ready yet, but nobody's shying away from competition in Switzerland. Yeah. And to the national team, because I'm also the head coach of Team Czech Republic, and we actually have a game this year against each other, but we don't. Switzerland against Czech Republic. Yeah. Right. What's your idea about Team Switzerland? And yeah, of course, there will be no further games this year in the Hero.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe we could get a Zoom Madden tournament going. I mean, we could figure something out.
Just created teams playing.
We have some really strong Madden players in Switzerland, so you know, just so you know.
I see that. I see that. No, I mean, how's the plan about Team Switzerland? Is there some changes, or how that? I mean, you had a tough schedule. You played against Austria and Italy last year.
No, totally. I think that, you know, the national team is an interesting topic because we have a lot of excited kids who would love to be on the national team. And I think this applies to any country. I personally know a few guys who are on the national team, either in Switzerland or in other parts of Europe. And for them, it's a great honor to be there with the national anthem and the flag and all that. It's brilliant, especially for a minority sport like American football in Europe, right? But how do we make it sustainable, and how do we ensure that teams don't feel like we're just throwing money out the window? Well, we need to put in a lot of hours to make sure that the training camp aspect, the preparation aspect, everything that goes around it is also solid, right? And I don't know if historically we've been at 100% of what we can do in those departments. I think that in the past we have maybe thrown a bunch of guys together from the NLA and said, you know, go play Italy and see what happens. And that hasn't really generated the kind of results that we would want. So Claudio has brought in some guys to help us out with that. You know, we got a guy, Sasha Gabo, who's come in to help us a little bit with that. We have a few other people working for us at the moment. But of course, in the current situation, it's really hard to put a solid product on the table, right? And it's also hard for the teams to commit any kind of resources in terms of budget to a product when it's not yet there, right? So it's like, hey guys, give us the seed capital. We're going to make this work. So already the base proposition is a tricky one. But on top of that, right now, we can't really do any form of training camp. And we're not sure if there's going to be, you know, any kind of games until 2021, be they friendly or otherwise, right? So definitely an area that we're looking at and we would love to work on, especially if we can get some kind of junior national team going there as well. If we can develop that aspect as well, that would be great, I think, in my personal opinion. Because, you know, the senior guys, they're there and okay, they get their medal, it's great. But if you can also have this carrot for juniors to be on the national team, that could also be, you know, I think that's an area that we could develop further. Let me put it to you that way. But that goes back to my initial comment about developing junior football in Switzerland further as a whole.
Okay. Normally, right now for the national team, how many teams do you have in the youth? Is there like a U19, U17, or how's that current setup national team wise?
My understanding is that there are two teams. Now, I'm not an expert in this area. You know, I'm very bird's eye view with the national teams, but my understanding is that historically we've had two teams, so U19 and seniors. Okay. Could there be other teams in the future? I don't know. Right. I think that for the moment, if we can put a polished U19 and senior product on the field, that's already a big win for us. Right. And I think that the path to that comes through consistency in training camp processes and recruitment of players into the team. So this is something that Sasha and others are working on right now. You know, we have a lot of talented people in our organization who are looking at different options, and we have actually been partnering relatively closely also with Swiss Olympic and our local youth and sport. So Jeunesse and Sport, YNS, at the Swiss level to see if they can provide some guidance and counsel. And one announcement that I can make, which I don't know if it's on our website or not, but we announced this to teams about 10 days ago in the midst of all this bad news with the pandemic, is that we have now been recognized as a sport by Youth and Sport in Switzerland. So what that means is that as of, I believe, autumn of 2021 or something like that, we will have the ability to have coaches and trainers being recognized as youth trainers and delivering structured youth training programs to our kids. And that partnership will be a source of revenue for us, will be a source of financing. Maybe we can throw some of that at coaches. We can throw some of that at teams to help them develop their junior programs. And so this kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying about developing juniors. And this is really the brainchild of Claudio. Claudio has been working on this for years, you know, prior to taking over as president of the league. So, you know, it's a big win for us to be recognized at the Swiss level. As a minority sport. We'll see where it goes. Right now, it's still very, you know, at the draft stage. We still need to figure a lot of stuff out. But the bottom line here is more money for youth, and hopefully the trickle down is stronger youth teams both at the club and national level.
Yeah, that's great. We hope all the best for you. How is about coaching in Switzerland? You have you try to build a coaching license system or school system, because this was one thing what I was wondering when I was coming there in 2019 and 2018. I was like, whoa, there was no license system for coaches.
Sure.
Is there something going on, or how that goes?
Yeah, so this is definitely one of the topics on the table. This is a topic that was discussed as recently as the last General Assembly when we were elected. And so, yeah, it's a tough one. So basically, if I put my, if I keep my SAFV hat on, obviously we need to have some kind of coaching training certification process that ensures that the people who have responsibility for the children that we're putting into football in Switzerland, and then the adults as well, but to a lesser extent, are responsible, are doing things in a safe way, are teaching football the correct way. And of course we could benefit from a program like that. Then if I take my SAFV hat on and I put my, realistic or whatever practical hat on, in a practical sense, when I look at teams today in Switzerland, and when I look at the resources that we have, there are a few hiccups here. There are a few problems here. So I think that the younger teams, the teams where maybe it's a quarterback coaching the team, or, somebody who played for a few years in a bigger team, not an experienced coach training the team, there's a pride aspect there. They don't want to be like, what? I need training. I'm good. I got it all figured out. I played, 100 hours of Madden. I've watched the NCAA.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So you have this attitude, right? Which is something we need to get over. And then you have the attitude of the top coaches in the sport in Switzerland at the NLA level, the Broncos, the Basel, the Bern, the Geneva, the Winterthur. The guys are going kind of up and down, but really if I'm looking at the very, very top, and I'm looking at Geneva and Calanda and Larry and Jeff, these guys, their resources are stretched pretty thin. And I don't know if it's interesting for them to go to the equivalent of a beginner German class in terms of football coaching. These guys have been in the game, in the sport for decades. They could teach this type of class, right? So to tell them, hey guys, you need to get certified, it's tough. It's tough to make that hurdle. So if you have best practices to share from Germany, I'm all ears, right? Because these two buckets, they're hard to manage from those angles.
Yeah, that's what we do in Czech Republic, because we had the same. We okay, we want to develop the national team, because we need national coaches. And we were doing exactly, we guys like Buffin or Larry, we say, you get your license if you teach my guys. If you come as a teacher, you will get your license. And because that's always a great thing, because when you put someone in the people don't know, they're always like, I'm not want to leave, I'm Division 4 coach, I'm just waiting for the call of the Patriots,
right?
And all that stuff. And that's what we did. We put the head coaches and coordinators. I mean, also Basel has great coaches, and the junior.
No, there's definitely strong talent in Switzerland in terms of coaching. Now, there's not dozens of professional coaches in Switzerland, but there's at least a handful, and we would love to use their services and their abilities to train other coaches. Now, it's just a question of looking at their resources, looking at the time they have, and using it effectively, and throwing a proposition at them that isn't 3 weekends full and right. It needs to be something that is compact and balanced and useful that everybody can appreciate. So is that a weekend? Is that a day? I don't know. But we have to start somewhere. So this is not something that we're actively, I would say, working on right now. The main focus is still obviously how do we manage the pandemic? When can we start the game, right? But it's definitely, if we were not in a pandemic situation, this would definitely be one of our big topics. How do we push this through? How can we make this work? So beyond the national teams and developing youth football, this would also be one of the topics that we would want to focus on as an association. We're just not there yet. But we have the guys. We just need to motivate them. We need to put something in front of them that is tangible and appealing. I personally have experience with getting Larry from Geneva involved with running a free clinic for the players from my former team, the Centurions, right? And he agreed to do that because he saw that as an opportunity to just spread awareness about his program in Geneva for some of the more motivated players. I saw this as an opportunity to just get some time with a guy who just, you know, oozes football knowledge, right? And so when you put it in that kind of tangible win-win format, like I think what you're saying in the Czech Republic, it works, but it requires time and effort to put that together, right? And very frequently, nobody wants to make that first step. Nobody wants to be the guy who's initiating. Everybody's like, oh, I'll do it, you know, if the other team does it. I'll do it if this coach does it, right? Usually that's how these conversations go. So work in progress. Fingers crossed we can motivate some of these guys to get it to, you know, put it together and motivate them to spend their time. You know, do we throw some money, some resources at this? Do we offer them something to motivate, to stimulate them? I don't know. So we need to figure that out. But I definitely know that we have a few guys in Switzerland. You know, I'm looking at Jeff, I'm looking at Larry, Dwayne obviously in Basel as well, Robin Haas over there with the junior program, and John Jordan, who's our technical director, head of the youth program in Bern. You know, these are all guys, and of course, you know, Vince Tor and the other teams as well. There's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of talent, and some of this talent is coming and leaving Switzerland. But the guys I just mentioned by name, they've been here for some years. I don't think they're going anywhere. They're not mercenary coaches. And if we can get them involved as trainers, that would be brilliant. I'm just not sure what the path towards that is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a good plan, because this is that's what it is. You need coaches on the table, because then what's the other thing what you mentioned? Then it stops on one point to bring, oh, you're the quarterback, you're also the offense coordinator.
Yeah.
And next year you get the next guy and the next guy and the next guy.
And to just go back and put a footnote on my comment about my previous team, the Centurions. So when we had that session, it was an open session hosted by the Centurions. It wasn't just for our team. And so what ended up happening is that you had guys coming from the Riviera Saints, you had guys coming from the Morge Bandits, you had a bunch of regional guys, Monte Rhinos, who were like an hour and a half away, right? All these guys came just to be part of this clinic with Larry. And, you know, so there's definitely interest from the player side. And I think that we can apply the same logic to the kind of guys we're talking about with coaching, you know, the former quarterbacks, the armchair quarterbacks with Madden. These types of guys, I'm sure, would love to be on a field with Larry, learning the ropes, or with Jeff or with these other guys, learning the ropes. We just need to think of a format and a timeline. And, you know, maybe the pandemic is an opportunity for us to revisit this, right? Maybe if we're not able to put a football product on the field this year, or we struggle to do that, then maybe we have some coaching clinics. Maybe we have some Zoom sessions. You know, maybe we can throw something together. And you're definitely planting some seeds in my brain that I'm going to take back to my committee and you know, talk about all this.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, because like, for example, here in Germany, they have what? They have the A, B, and C license, right, Coach Sebastian?
Yeah.
And it starts off from like the C is the lowest, and it's the B, then it's the A. Funny thing you were talking about before, because I was also coaching for the state team in Bavaria for 7 seasons. And in the beginning, you didn't have to have the license, right? And then at some point, they came to us, and then they said, oh, you need to get it. It's a requirement. And for some of us, like, we've been coaching here for 6 years, like, and then they told us we had to pay for it. And it was like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Right.
No, because it was like an exception that they basically had in the beginning, and then basically the Bavaria Federation tried to change certain things. So you kind of get that. But for the most part, from what I know, was it first league, you need to have at least, it was an A licensed coach on staff, right?
Right.
For us to compete.
In every GFL team, you have to get one coach with the A license, which is the highest license you can get. And C license, I think it's a must. You have to be the lowest license is the C. I think if you want to coach juniors, kids, you have that C license. Right. And this is really like how you work with kids, how you know, concussion. And that is not like how you want to defend the RPO offense. You know?
No, sure. No, I hear what you're saying. I think that with the thing I mentioned that's coming up next year with youth and sport, we have a mechanism there where we're getting federal funding from Switzerland to develop to train the trainers, right?
Yeah.
And I think that these two things are not in separate buckets. These two things are explicitly combined, right? So even if this year we're not able to put something together for lack of time, resources, because of the pandemic, whatever, I'm certain that in the future, with this program supporting our sport in Switzerland, we will have the structure and the resources to make coaches train a reality. It's just, it's purely draft. It's purely in a draft planning phase right now. We just secured this approval, this good news from Youth and Sport earlier in April. It's still very fresh. So, we're definitely never going to be at the level of the GFL, but we can definitely make some progress. And I think we now have the tools to do so.
Yeah. One last question. What do you think? I mean, football get more and more public and more famous in Europe about, NFL is shown on free TV. Is Switzerland overall, you feel there is a feedback for you too? As you say, there's more kids calling the teams coming in. I mean, Switzerland is like 4 languages, also French language, Italian. Is there a boom, a football boom in Switzerland right now or before the pandemic?
That depends on what you're looking at, right? Depends on which statistical segment you're looking at. So to go back to my previous comment, I think, we're somewhere around 3,000, maybe more. I should have prepared for this podcast. I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
But what I remember, because I did an interview recently with a newspaper in Geneva, and we were talking about this as well. And what I remember from digging through our statistics on our website is that we have not had significant growth with senior football for years. There's been growth. It's been steadily growing, and the overall number of teams has gone up. Now we have a C League. We didn't really have a C League, 10 years ago, and now we have a C League that needs to be split in 2 divisions because it's so big. And we're talking about, do we get a D League? Do we get an E League? Right? So overall, the amount of clubs and football teams in Switzerland has been steadily growing. But the biggest spike that's really noticeable is with youth football. So with youth football, I think it's doubled or even tripled in the past 10 years. If we consider youth tackle and youth flag. And so really this is an indicator for me that in spite of, safety concerns, in spite of the fact that the free channels like SRF and RTS in the French side aren't necessarily showing the Super Bowl anymore because they just don't see the benefit of doing it. It comes and it goes. It's not clear if it's going to happen or not. And you see the Super Bowl in some bars, but it's not like it's everywhere, right? Yeah. Even though the curve of media has flattened over the last couple of years, and we've not seen a continuous progression in Europe, there's a slow upwards trickle. It's a slow upwards trickle overall in terms of interest, in spite of all the things I mentioned. But with the youth, it's actually booming. It's actually, and I think that comes from, it's not just sitting around throwing footballs around in parks and waiting for stuff to happen. We have very talented people at the club level, at the association level, in places like Chur and Geneva and Basel and Bern and everywhere across Switzerland, who are going to schools, who are partnering with schools to do flag demonstrations, who are doing little training camp things and training days and outreach, word of mouth and social media outreach to attract youth, and it's working. I know that if I take my former club as an example, we went from no youth program to 50 guys in 1 year. So if you really, then we lost them the next year, right? Yes. So it wasn't, you need to get the kids and you need to get the players but then you need the personnel and the coaching to keep that going. That's the challenge. And that's why you always see teams rising and falling in these amateur leagues like we have in Switzerland, right? Where at best we're looking at semi-professional teams at the top level. But overall, I think it's growing. I think the interest has not stopped. I think that people are still discovering the benefits of football, not just the dangers and the drawbacks, but also the benefits. You know, it's a sport for everybody, right? You know, white, black, big, small, fat, lean, whatever. There's a position for you on the field, and if there isn't, there's a position for you on the sideline or in the organizations that support these teams. And I think the diversity and the inclusion that we can offer as a sport in comparison to other more exclusive and selective sports like, you know, I don't know, well, football, which tends to, well, soccer, European soccer tends to be really not, I don't think it's as inclusive. You know, you don't have the bigger guys in there like we do, right? And it's not always open to everybody. A lot of times guys are really like, oh no, it's just my guys, you can't come. Whereas football, we need 50 guys. We need 50 guys on a team. So we're going to be as inclusive as we can be. And some teams, you know, I look at Lucerne, at your former team, you got two teams. You know, I know Calanda's had 2 teams in the past. Other teams have had 2 teams. Overall, the message is continuous steady growth and a lot of growth at the youth level and hopefully more to come. And that will really depend on the efforts of the volunteers and the personnel around these organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we come to an end, and it was a great talk with you, a great look into Switzerland football with a bright future, I feel, because Switzerland is a great country and doing a lot for sports. And I think the federation is with you and Claudio as on the board on a perfect way to grow. So we all hope this Corona goes as fast as it comes,
absolutely.
And we can see great teams growing up there, and of course other good coaches.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thanks for having me. You know, and I do want to send a special shout out to 2 groups. So one is you know, the Centurions. We do have like maybe a handful of veterans still playing, so a shout out to them. And another one is to the guys on the board working alongside me. So I'm definitely used as a mouthpiece here and there because I like to talk. But the heavy lifting is done by you know, the guys like John Jordan, our technical director, and Sasha Gavo and Claudio and Raymond with the refereeing. You know, we got a lot of talent in that committee and in a lot of the subcommittees that work with us. You know, we got great guys also looking at our junior program. So a special shout out to all these guys that put in the hard work, and also you know, a message to the teams. You're going to hear it from us again, and you've heard it from us before. If we can put football on the field in Switzerland this year, we'll do it. We just need to see how we can do this in a safe way that doesn't break the rules with the government and doesn't put our players and coaches and referees into any danger, you know, more than usual. So let's see if we can make it work.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gleb. Appreciate it, because even for me, it was very insightful since, you know, I've never had anything to do with Switzerland football. So it's really nice seeing, let's say, somebody new coming into it. And also, like with you just said, there's multiple people that are involved in this, basically that new vision and structure you guys are pushing forward. And it's interesting to see kind of like getting out from you, because, you know, you need to have that fresh insight come in. So at least for me, it's been also eye-opening, kind of listen how you guys are trying to do things, because there's some things that I like that I think, to be honest, they could be doing that also in the GFL. You know, so appreciate it very much. Also, you taking the time out of your day, because you could be spending.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure. You know, if we can teach something to the GFL, wow, you know, that's a big achievement for us, right? Because obviously you guys are one of the best leagues outside of North America. But obviously for us, a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about, this is at the theoretical level, and ultimately there's a lot of elbow grease that still needs to go into it before we can make this a reality. I think we do have the benefit of being smaller and more nimble than what more well-established leagues and associations, but that also has its drawbacks when you're trying to get volunteers and funding.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good day, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, you too, guys. Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.